Okay, I will call to order the October 23rd, 2017 special meeting of the Huron Board of Education. I will ask Mr. Christofferson to note the roll call. This time, I'll ask everyone to rise as Jasmine Snow leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jasmine. Our first item is the adoption of the agenda. The most recent agendas went out this afternoon. The only additions were a couple of new hires, a couple of resignations, one concession item pricing, and some congratulations in the district. With those changes, I'd ask for a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. Those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, the agenda is adopted. Moving into dates to remember, October 23rd and 24th, we have Huron Middle School Parent-Teacher Conferences from 3:30 to 6:45. October 26th and 30th, second and third grade Parent-Teacher Conferences from 3:30 to 6:45. November 1st is an early release day. November 2nd and 6th, kindergarten first grade parent-teacher conferences from 3:30 to 6:45. November 7th and 9th are 4th and 5th grade parent-teacher conferences from 3:30 to 6:45. November 11th is a Veterans Day holiday. That's on a Saturday this year. November 13th, the Board of Education meeting at 5:30 here at the IPC. November 22nd through the 24th is a holiday break, no school those days. And November 27th, Board of Education meeting, 5:30 at the IPC. Now I'll move into community input for any items not on the agenda. Is there anyone present for community input? Seeing no one rush to the podium, we have no conflict and consideration of waivers. And so we'll move into the consent agenda. Superintendent of Schools recommends approval of the following. We have 7 new hires to the district that require board approval to be covered by our workman's compensation plan. We have 2 resignations for board approval. Mary Ann Trandle from the Middle School Fall Play Director Coordinator, 10 years of service, and Marie Chase from the TAP program with 2 years of service. We have consideration and approval of bills that are in our agenda, and we have 1 new concession item pricing from Mrs. Tompkins. That is our consent agenda. We can pass it with 1 motion, or if any board member would like to pull any item out for further discussion, we can do so. Move approval.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Consent agenda passes. Now I will turn over to our superintendent as he celebrates the successes in our district.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. With congratulations, a lot of these, of course, are activity-oriented as we are getting to the end of the fall season. Congratulations to Windstorm for being selected second-team All-State in boys soccer. Congratulations to Hannah Pegler for being named at the Pegler or Pagler?
Pegler.
Pegler for being named the 2017 Academic All-State representative in girls soccer. Okay, then I want to congratulate the Huron competitive cheer and competitive dance teams for top 10 finishes in the team competition at the state finals. Tigers earned second place finish in hip hop, 6 points from the winner of Washington, and also earned a third place in jazz. They took 7th in pom. Tigers took home the 4th place trophy in the grand championship for team dance. The team cheer team from Huron overall placing was 9th, so both in the top 10. Congratulations to our state cross-country runners who competed this last weekend. And the AA girls in 32nd was Sammy Schultz. And then following was in the 102 was Alex Feenstra, followed by Victoria Buffington, followed by Braylee Thomas, followed by Jordan Adams, followed shortly thereafter by Isabel Shreve. In the Class A AA boys, Huron results, number 83 was Carlos Llanes, I believe it is. Our own Frank Hines was 89th. Will Ratke was 117th. and Gonzalo Quispe Laura was 122nd. Want to congratulate at the other end of the table Ms. Snow and the rest of the theater for a fun weekend of theater with a comedy on Friday and Saturday evening. So that's my congratulations. Thank yous goes to Rex Sawville for going above and beyond to help our students last Friday night when they needed a bus late at night getting home from the Black Hills, and Rex took it upon himself to get a bus out there for our students, and so I want to publicly thank him for that. I have several items to report on in the superintendent's report, but that's my congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Nebelsteck. Moving into board reports, our first one is the Classified Employee of the Month. It's like Mrs. Williamson's going to be presenting it to Kendall Lichtenberg, middle school grad coach.
Mrs. Williamson?
Yes.
Here's the
Oh. Thank you.
Yep.
I'm going to let you hold that because it's yours. Okay. It is quite an honor and a privilege for me to be here tonight to recognize Mr. Lichtenberg. Mr. Lichtenberg joined our staff in the fall of 2015 as an 8th grade special education para and served in 8th grade for 2 years. This past fall, we had him join us as a graduation coach. Mr. Lichtenberg sets a standard of helping students with unique needs that others should aim for. He makes every student feel that they're special and greets almost all of our kids at the front door in the morning, and they enjoy seeing him. Not many students will turn down a chance to work with Mr. L in his classroom. So he was nominated by a colleague, Sherry Lord, who wrote, "Kendall is always willing to go the extra mile in providing help to both staff and students. He is flexible with his scheduling and willing to help any staff member who needs help with covering a class or providing one-on-one help to any student in any subject area. His easygoing manner draws students to him as they are comfortable around him. He has a way of connecting with those hard-to-reach students." And we appreciate the things that you do for us, Kendall, here in middle school. I know staff and students feel this is a very well-deserved award, and so congratulations. Thanks, Kendall.
Congratulations, Kendall.
Yes,
Thank you, Kendall.
Thank you, Kendall.
Okay, our next report will be from Mrs. Nelson on the state report card.
Good evening. The purpose of this report is to provide stakeholders with information regarding the accountability results for the Huron School District for the 2016-2017 academic school year. We will begin by looking at the district level performance indicators. Federal law requires that 95% of students at the school, district, and state levels and across every subgroup participate in the state assessment. This allows stakeholders to gain a more robust view of how public students across the state are performing. Huron had an excellent participation in both the ELA and the math portion of the Smarter Balanced assessment that was given to all students in grades 3 through 8 and 11 in the spring of 2017. Student achievement is based on the student's performance on the Smarter Balanced assessments in both English Language Arts, ELA, and math for most students. Students with the most severe cognitive disabilities take an alternative assessment. Smarter Balance is a single snapshot, a summative assessment designed to measure each student's mastery of the South Dakota content standards in ELA and math. A student receives a scale score which falls into 4 achievement levels. Level 1 and 2 are considered not proficient. 3 and 4 are proficient and above. Proficiency means that a student is on track for meeting college and career readiness standards upon graduation from high school. Looking at this chart, you will see that Huron students scored below the state average in both ELA and math on the Smarter Balance assessment with regards to percent proficient. However, ELA is up 4.8% from last year, and math is up 3.5% from last year. Academic growth. is based on the student growth percentiles model. In this model, every student is compared to his or her peers. Students are grouped with other South Dakota students based on their performance on year one of the assessment, and then their scores are compared to determine how much they grow. In this chart, you will see Huron students exceeded the state percentage in ELA and math with regards to the percent of students at or above peer growth. Attendance. Attendance points are awarded based on the percentage of students who reach at least 94% attendance when rounded up. All students enrolled in grades kindergarten through grade 8 are included in the attendance calculation if they were enrolled in school for at least 15 school days. Our students are below the state average and are falling short of the goal of having 94% of our students attend school 94% of the year. Graduation rate. The graduation rate is based on the number of students who graduate in 4 years and a summer with a regular high school diploma. The percentage of Huron students who graduate with their cohort in 4 years and a summer is below the state's goal of 85% and the state's percentage. Completion rate is the percentage of students in the most recently completed school year who have obtained a diploma or a GED. This includes students who graduated outside of the traditional 4-year time frame, both early and late graduates. This also includes students who obtained an alternative completion credential before age 21, namely the GED. The Huron School District's completion rate is below the state percentage of students who either earned their diploma or a GED certificate. The college readiness score is based on those students who graduated in 2016 who met or exceeded the Board of Regents cut scores on the ACT or the AccuPlacer. Huron students scored below the state percentage of students meeting the designated benchmarks. SPI is used to determine accountability at the building level. The overall system is based on a 100-point SPI consisting of multiple indicators to measure a school's performance. South Dakota has transitioned to the new education law, the Every Student Succeeds Act. SPI indicators vary depending upon the grade level. At the elementary level and the middle schools, they are evaluated on student achievement, academic growth, and attendance. High schools are evaluated on student achievement, high school completion, and college and career readiness. The Buchanan K-1 Center and the Madison 2-3 Center remain focus schools. Focus schools are schools which rank is among the lowest 10% of Title I schools across the state. The Washington 4-5 Center and the middle school have met the exit criteria requirements to exit focus school status, and they are no longer identified as focus schools. Huron High School remains a progressing school. Progressing schools are schools whose SPI score is above the bottom 5% and below the top 10%. The majority of schools that do not accept title funds are not classified, and they're not classified as exemplary or status schools, are considered progressing. So now we're going to take a look at individual schools within our district. The Buchanan K-1 students and the Madison grade 2 students do not take the Smarter Balance assessment. Therefore, their student achievement points are derived all from grade 3 at Madison. This chart indicates that Huron grade 3 students scored below the state average in both ELA and math on the Smarter Balanced assessment in percent proficient. This chart indicates that the Washington 4-5 Center students scored below the state average in both ELA and math on the Smarter Balanced assessment in percent proficient. To hold schools accountable, South Dakota has a unique school level, district level, and state level goals called Annual Measurable Objectives, or AMOs. AMOs are based on the overarching goal of reducing by half in 6 years the percentage of students in the all students group and in each subgroup, including GAP and non-GAP groups, who are not proficient. AMOs are reset every 6 years. Prior to last year, our elementary schools were reported as one school. This year, each elementary stands on its own. Therefore, there are new baselines established, so you won't see any movement on this chart because we're starting over now that our grade level schools are reporting out separately. So this is the Buchanan-Madison, Washington, ELA, Buchanan-Madison, Math, and Washington.
So I just wanted to, when I was reviewing those all have blue lines on there, which are what we're supposed to hit, but we don't have any of the yellow line on there because we're at zero.
Year
You're
one.
zero right
Yes,
now.
yep.
And next year we'll have year
We'll
one
have a mark
filled in.
on the
Okay.
line next year.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the blue line is what we expect students to, I'm sorry, the expectation of how many students will be proficient in that given year.
If we follow the blue line's path, in 6 years, we should cut the number of students in half that were not proficient. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about terminology, GAP versus non-GAP. One of the main components of the state accountability system is the use of the GAP group, which consists of subgroups of students that have historically contributed to the achievement gap. The GAP group contains students who are part of one or more of the following subgroups: American Indian or Alaskan Native, Black, Hispanic, English language learners, students with disabilities, and economically advanced or disadvantaged students. Students who do not belong to any of the groups I just listed are part of the non-GAP group. And again, the GAP group are historically contributing to the achievement gap. So let's take a look at Buchanan and Madison ELA. And again, remember, these are grade 3 scores. The percent of Buchanan and Madison GAP and non-GAP students who scored proficient and advanced on the ELA portion of the Smarter Balance is below the state average. If you look at that chart, the top 2 bars are the GAP group, the bottom 2 are the non-GAP, the gold is the state, and the blue is Huron. Here's the Washington ELA. The percent of Washington GAP students who scored proficient and advanced on the ELA portion of the Smarter Balance is below the state percentage. However, the percent of Washington non-GAP students who scored proficient and advanced is above the state percentage. Buchanan and Madison Math, GAP and non-GAP students who scored proficient and advanced on the math portion of the Smarter Balance is below the state percentage. The percent of Washington GAP students who scored proficient and advanced on the math portion of the Smarter Balance is below the state percentage. However, the percent of Washington non-GAP students who scored proficient and advanced is above the state percentage. And now we'll move to the middle school scores. Looking at this chart, you will see that here middle school students scored above the state average in ELA and below the state average in math on the Smarter Balanced Assessment in percent proficient. In this AMO chart, you'll see 2 lines as you were describing earlier. You will notice that here middle school students exceeded their year 2 ELA AMO target. So again, the goal is to follow the blue line or be above the blue line. And in this case, here middle school ELA scores are above the blue line. And here middle school students fell just short of obtaining their year 2 math AMO target. The percent of Huron Middle School GAP and non-GAP students who scored proficient and advanced on the ELA portion of the Smarter Balanced Assessment exceeded the state percentage in both GAP and non-GAP. And in math, the percent of students, GAP and non-GAP, who exceeded the state average happened in both GAP and non-GAP. Moving on to the high school, you'll see that Huron High School students scored below the state average in both ELA and math on the Smarter Balanced Assessment. However, I would note that ELA is up to almost 20% from last year. In this AMO chart, you will notice that Huron High School students exceeded their Year 2 ELA AMO target. They went from well below the line to above the blue line. However, the Huron High School students fell just short of their Year 2 math AMO target. The percent of Huron High School GAP students who scored proficient and advanced on the ELA portion of the Smarter Balanced Assessment is below the state percentage. The percent of Huron High School non-GAP students who scored proficient and advanced is just above the state average. The percent of Huron High School GAP students who scored proficient and advanced on the math portion of the Smarter Balance is below the state percentage, and the non-GAP students who scored proficient and advanced is above the state percentage. And in summary, the Huron School District is held to many measures of accountability. Huron students exceeded the state percentage in ELA and math with regards to student growth. The Washington 4-5 Center and the middle school met the exit criteria to exit focus school status and are no longer identified as focus schools. There is room for improvement as GAP students in the district are below the state levels of achievement in almost every building. And increasing attendance and graduation rates would improve the SPI scores of our schools. And following the board meeting tomorrow, the Huron School District's report card and the school report cards can be found on the district's website located within the district tab. What questions can I answer for you? Comments?
I think we first need to recognize that I think if you go to the slide for Huron Middle School ELA, GAP and non-GAP students. I mean, I just think that is itself is a tremendous achievement. The fact that both the GAP students and the non-GAP students are beating state averages, I think is just, I mean, I don't know how many times we can repeat that. That's just wonderful. And so I think that's definitely a highlight of this report. Especially considering that I don't know what the percentage of our GAP students is English language learners. I assume it's a significant percentage of our GAP students. And so the fact that our GAP group is still above state average in English language arts is, I think, phenomenal. The one thing I did want to ask is I saw, so in a few slides above that, where you had the middle school ELA and math proficiency, and it said that our math proficiency was 41.67 proficient or advanced, and which was slightly below the state math percentage. But then down at when we had the GAP and non-GAP, for math, both of the bars for our GAP and non-GAP were above the state average. So I was trying to figure out how are both bars for math above, where in that one we're below.
That is a good question.
I can speculate.
Okay.
Okay. I think it's the high percentage
Turn
of
your
students.
mic
that-
on.
Oops, I'm sorry. Excuse me, I thought I turned it on and I turned it off. I can speculate, because I spent quite a bit of time studying this. I think it's because we have such a large number of GAP students, okay? So when you put the two together, our combined score, when non-gap and gap are together, it's a mathematical improbability for us to be above it in the total score, okay? Our gap, which is a large number of students, are above the state average for gap. And our non-gaps, which are the ones that the board's been very specific about, can you compete by going to school here like any place else in the state? And the data is here to prove you can, but that's not as many students. And so what I speculate is if you can see that the gap scores are significantly lower, right? And so if all the students in the state are being measured, we're going to have a lot more players.
And the next one, on the math one though, both blue bars, and I'm on middle school.
Right.
Right there, one more, right there. So that one, both blue bars are above the state average.
Correct.
And you're right, there may be some algebra I'm not
Yeah.
catching in there.
Well,
but,
let me try it again. So, I'm pointing to my screen, but it's the same thing that the public can see on their screen. If we could get that up for the public to see what's on the monitor. Thank you. My point is that I believe that if we have 309 gap students and we have 171 non-gap students, and you put those scores together, and you can see that you're talking about gap across the state or the 22nd percentile and non-gap across the state or the 63rd percentile. So you put all the students together, and we are nearly 2-to-1 gap students. We're going to have 2-to-1 the lower scores in that total scores. Okay? Mike, you just came through the same statistics program. You're with me on that? Yeah. It's the volume of students that we have in the gap, which we're beating the gap students, we're beating the non-gap students, but collectively we're 2-to-1 gap students in our district compared to some ESD AA schools I would cite would probably be less than 20% gap.
okay.
Okay, and so therefore we have a 309 accumulation of that score, and we have 171 accumulation of this score.
Okay.
So together it would be mathematically impossible for us to pass them, which is why the board has asked for years, break it down so we know what the students specifically are doing.
Okay. That makes sense.
I know when I looked at the individual grade level scores, 8th grade math was not above the state average, and that 6th grade math was above, and 7th grade math was right at. So that might have played into it as well.
Any further questions, comments?
I have comments if the board is done, but I wanted the board to comment first.
Go ahead, Mr. Neville,
Well, Sherry, I appreciated you putting this together in a way that is concise and is given year to year. And I appreciate the fact that you're very direct on how we rate on each of them. So I wrote some notes as we went through. I believe that when our attendance rate meets the state average, you will see us come much, much closer on the graduation rate. That if we need anything from our partners, which are the parents, it's to get their children to school every day ready to learn. Because as long as our attendance goals are at 78%, instead of 78% of the students are here 94% of the time, when the goal across the state is 94%, those are all the days when we're falling behind, and thus it affects our graduation rate. So I would just ask parents to partner with us in raising the expectations on attendance. I believe that and students having proper rest when they come are just critical components from there. I'm glad that you brought it up, Mr. Wheeler, about the non-gap students being above, and we've been there with the middle school the last couple of years, but I wanted to move to the screen of the high school junior class ESL and junior class mathematics. Our non-gap students are above the non-gap students in the state of South Dakota by average, and that has been huge as far as our maintaining a commitment to teach every child where they come to us. We've shown you data the last couple of years that our entry-level kindergartners are lower each year than the previous year's kindergartners. So the challenge of running the race with the starting line falling behind makes our work urgent. That's what I would like to share. And then what I'm amongst all of this, what I'm excited about with the GAP students is when the charts come out, and it's way early in this, Sherry, and if you can find it faster than me, that shows that our students grow at a faster rate than their peers grow. So a school should take every child where they come, no matter how low they are, how high they are. You come to us as you are. How fast we can get them to grow is a critical mission of the school district. And is that the one that shows with
Yes.
their, compared to their peers?
Yes.
So go through that again, because that's very important to me on how that
When you
comes out.
compare it to the state of South Dakota, Huron School District students are 62.3 at or above their peers in ELA compared to 55.69. And in math, they're 59.43 compared to 52.81 with the state.
And so what I share is important there, and I know I'm repeating, is that how we improve our students from where they're at to where they can be it should be the mission of the school, and so that's an important one. On the other side, it should not be okay that our students do not score higher, but it's not okay with anyone in the district. So we want to continue to set our expectations high, like you do during your goals, and then not give you a PR presentation, but give you a data that is accurate as to what's going on. I hope that we've done that.
One other thing I wanted to verify, I think it's definitely correct that we want to make sure that we are focusing on every student and teaching them where they're at. But I think it's important for the public to know and for me to confirm that the test results that we were talking about here from the Smarter Balanced Assessment, which is given once a year, and if my recollection is correct, this is an assessment in which you have, if you are an English language learner, you have to take it after your first year, regardless of what your score is and how much you know English. And so I think the public needs to be aware that there are a significant number of students who take this test regardless of their English language ability, and that severely affects our scores. Now, it's not an excuse. We have to continue to work towards them, but I think the public needs to know that very important piece of information when reviewing this information.
They have to take math the first year, and then they're given a year for ELA.
Say that
before
again,
they-
please.
They have to take the math assessment their first year in the country.
So the math, their first year without any assistance, and as you said, after 1 year, the ELA.
Well, I wasn't even aware of that. So they have to take math regardless if they know how to read math questions.
Without assistance.
Without assistance. Oh,
And your research will show that acquiring a language to a level to compete academically with what you know in your other language is about a 3 to 5 year process at the fastest level. So that's why you can see that the students in the lower elementaries were able to move and move and move until we can get them competing at the middle school and high school level.
And that shows because I think in your Washington 4-5 center, you saw a lot more growth. You saw beating state averages, which would make perfect sense with that.
One last comment I'd like to make is the elementary, Buchanan and Madison. There's 3 ways that you can earn points for SPI. So the middle school earns it with growth, with their student achievement, and with attendance. And the Washington 4-5 Center earns those 3 different ways. But because third graders are the first grade to take the state assessment, they cannot earn growth points. So when you look at their SPI scores, it's important to note that they are missing a third of their points. They're not even eligible for them because of the way our school buildings are divided out. Most schools are not grade level schools in the state, and so they would have a wider range of grades in one building. So I think it's just worth noting that that's how the points are determined for the lower elementary.
And I have participated with Mrs. Nelson with conversations with the state about the fact that the way they measure, and with us having grade level buildings, it is statistically impossible with 2 data points for us to compete against the other schools in the state, and the state acknowledges that it's statistically impossible the way it's currently written. They don't have a solution, but they acknowledge that we cannot gain that 3rd data point. And so the K3 doesn't have a chance to show you from the start to the finish how much growth's going on.
Right. We did put in an appeal, but we were denied.
Any further comments? Thank you, Sherry. Very
Thank
good
you.
data. Okay, now I will turn it to Mr. Nebelsack for his superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you. Several things I know I'm repeating, but middle school parent-teacher conferences are today and tomorrow from 3:30 to 6:45. That's why I welcome Board Member Craig Lee here, because that's where he was. So glad you were doing your parent thing first tonight. Want to note that this weekend the All-State Singers will be performing at All-State Chorus and the All-State Orchestra people with them. The concert is Saturday night. I've been to those before, and so want to wish good luck to their director, Mrs. Stukrath, as they head for Sioux Falls. Hopefully we will be completed so the audience will not be able to hear the band in the background, but tonight is the marching band indoor exhibition. And so if you happen to be watching this live on your computer this evening, I'd encourage you to come to the arena for that. I want to wish good luck to the Tiger football team as they're in the football playoffs against Harrisburg this Thursday evening. And Mr. Radke has announced that Huron High School is participating in Unity Day on Wednesday. I'm very proud of that and wanted board members and the community to be aware. They are encouraged to wear orange as they join schools across the country in standing united against bullying today. And I know that has been promoted at the schools, and I wanted our adult community to know that that is going on. I appreciate that initiative. The rest of my report, the special education state accreditation review is going on. That's why we needed a little bit of a different configuration tonight with our tables, because this is their work area. The state people were here today, tomorrow, and the exit review is Wednesday about 11 o'clock in the morning. And we hope they do find some things that we can learn and grow from, but I've also received some nice compliments to the very significant staff we have under Mrs. Waylander working in special education. I would like the board members to let me know before they leave tonight whether you're available on December 4th for the legislative luncheon. I have heard from 2 of the 3 legislators, and they are available. And as we rotate through the schools, it's time for us to move to the high school, and Mr. Radke and Mrs. Konechky are going to host that in the, I believe it's A208 is the large conference room, and we'll have I believe that we're allowed to serve a meal again. Last year that was in a quandary, but I believe we're allowed to serve them a meal, and that'll be December 4th, pending the majority of you being able to make it. Last week I was elected the chair for the School Finance Accountability Board, and so I'm doing my best to prepare for that work, which comes up on November 16th and 17th. And again, fortunate that, thank you to Mr. Christofferson and all of the work of the board members. We are in full compliance with that initiative for improved teacher pay. The large school group is going to meet again next Monday in Pierre. And so that's, again, a part of preparing for legislation. And when they have finalized the stands of the large school group, I will email those attachments out to you so that you are aware. But what I wanted to state is that the large school group by vote comes to consensus with their position, but our bylaws state that any school can have a position independent of that position if we so choose. Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Nebelsack. Our final board report is from the Transportation Department on the Zonar student tracking system from Mr. Sawville.
First of all, I want to apologize to the football team for not knowing how to control the temperature on the bus. I don't drive those big buses very often, and I heard it was a little warm in the back there, but we played a little game of turning the heaters on and off till we got back home, so I think we all made it. But yeah, that was got to drive those a little more often to figure them out. You guys might know that some sort of student tracking identification has been a goal of mine for quite a few years, so we worked last year with a company that we thought could provide what we needed to do, but then we found out after about a year that it just wasn't going to work. So Kathy Bostrom, the team leader, did some research. She found this company, Zonar, and then brought it to me, and we started looking at it, had some meetings with them, and we felt that it would meet our needs. So Zonar provided us with a grant of about $9,300 total that provided all the equipment for the buses. And all the equipment is basically a scanner that was mounted in a bus that will read these RFID cards when the student gets on the bus. They hook into our buses into your computer control module where when you're going to put a computer or a reader in there to read your computer and stuff. They hook in through there. So they do provide data about our buses too, about speed, location, everything. So they're pretty handy. But anyway, Zonar itself is it is a student tracking system, but it's kind of a misleading word because it doesn't really track them when they're out and about. It only lets us know when they get on and off the bus. It provides no personal data whatsoever. There's no personal data stored in this card. This is just plain and simply an RFID chip. And inside on the back is a number, and we've assigned that number to every student that rides the bus that's in K through 5th grade, or 5th grade. Right now, we're just in the elementaries. We're only in the lower grades right now trying to get this rolled out. We started last Friday with 19 test students. We had a little glitch. We found out that you have to punch them at the right end because otherwise you go right through the RFID chip. So once we found out the right end, then we're okay. So we started it last Friday, and so far we're working out the glitches. You do got to be kind of close to the scanner for it to work. What will happen is the scanner's blue when it's working, when the bus is on. When the student goes by it with their card, it'll scan, turn green, and beep. So the drivers know that it took the card when they get on or not. So we had a meeting with the drivers. We kind of give them some training on it, and they know what they got to do to get the students to get by there. And I think with a little bit of training, a little bit of practice, it'll be fine. Everybody will get it and do that. We do attach them to their backpacks for now because most kids remember their backpacks. So we do attach them to the backpack, but if they don't want to carry one, then we could probably do a lanyard of some type or whatever. But so far it's working out pretty good. There is a system called ZPass Plus that I passed out to you right there, and that's an app that parents can download onto their phone, and they put this number into that app, and every time that number gets on and off the bus, it'll send them a notification on their phone. And it's pretty neat. We watched it be tested out there, and I did it with my grandson, but he's part of the test group, but unfortunately he didn't know he had the new card. He thought he still had the old bag card, so he didn't go on this morning, or he didn't scan this morning, so I can't show you that on my phone, but I'll be out there tomorrow morning. We'll get him. So, really, I think this is really what we call a starting point to find a missing student. With our young population, some of them with the language barriers and stuff that we have, it's hard for these little kids to know what to do sometimes. They'll just literally get off a bus because it stopped. They don't realize what they're supposed to be doing, or whatever they're supposed to be doing. So this is a very good way of identifying students and where they're at, or when they got on and when they got off, so that when we do have to start that looking process, we know where to start. We know that either they didn't get on at all, so they might still be at school, or they got off at the wrong stop. And that's where we can start from. So at least we know when they got on and got off and where they might be at, or what area of the town they might be at. Then we can start looking from there. So I think it's really a neat system. We're going to go a little more in depth with it and try and get something out to the public on how it all works. But for now, I just wanted to let you know that we have it up and running. It's working. It's a very, very neat system. We can build upon it later on. We can turn it into a maintenance program for our buses where the drivers would scan certain parts of the bus and it would tell us that they scanned them. So it's really a good system, but I just wanted people to know that it's not, it doesn't track, like I said, it doesn't track students as they move around in town or whatever. And again, there's no personal data stored in these cards. These cards are just strictly a name and a number. And we don't put a picture on them either. There's no picture on here, there's just their name and their number, so that we know whose card that is or make sure that that's the right student with the right card. It's going to be a little bit of a process, but I think once we get it down, it's going to be a great process and a very reliable way to identify where these students are at when they ride the bus. So, anybody have any questions about it, or?
Do you expect to get everybody in this program yet this year?
I think so. We're going to start rolling it out or issuing them out at these open houses. We're going to try and start with the lower grades as they do that. But eventually, yes, throughout the year, everybody will have to have one of these to ride the bus. And you're supposed to, when your student rides a bus, you're supposed to fill out a form to let us know contact information for if there's an emergency or your student, if we need to find you or your parent or whatever. So we have to make sure everybody's done that, and that's going to be a little bit of time till we get everybody to fill out those forms that they were supposed to fill out, and then we get these cards issued and stuff. So yes, but I think by the end of the year we want to have everybody, I hope by Christmas we have everybody with a card that rides the bus. So.
Any further questions or comments? Thank you, Rex.
Okay, thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Okay, we have no old business, and our two items of new business are about the 2018 Associated School Boards of South Dakota Delegate Assembly coming up. So we need to take our positions on the legislative resolutions and the standing positions. So I think we'll start with the legislative resolutions and just kind of go through those. I hope everybody had a chance to read through those. I'm not going to read the whole things, but we'll just take them one at a time and stake out our positions. Okay, first item is an achievement in equity. We have a proposed amendment on preschool standards. Associated School Boards of South Dakota supports South Dakota Early Learning Guidelines for voluntary preschool education programs. Looks like they're just changing some lines from last year. Does anybody have any comments on this one? Seems pretty straightforward. Okay. State-funded preschool. This is a new resolution. ASBSD supports state funding of public voluntary preschool education programs so long as it does not jeopardize or repurpose current funding of public K-12 education. That makes sense. I don't think we'd have any problems with that.
I think given the what we just discussed, where our kindergarten students, we're seeing that their starting line is kind of farther and farther behind. The more of them we can get into preschool, the better to help the district.
Absolutely. So I don't know that there'll be any state funding for that coming forth, but at least ASBSD is staking out a position.
It's one of those things that's probably unlikely, but
Yeah, a lot of these are probably unlikely, but they have their position. All right, professional development, a proposed amendment. ASBSD supports full funding for mandated professional development. I see no concerns there. Compulsory school attendance. ASBSD supports compulsory attendance in public school to age 18 or until a student graduates. Now, this is the one that for the last several years we've been on the opposite side. For the benefit of our two new board members, our rationale has been that back when kids could drop out at 16, you had a better chance at getting them to come back once they realized the grass was not greener on the other side. And these students tended to come back and complete high school, where now when they're there till 18 before they drop out, they're so far behind, we tend to lose them. Did I state that correctly, Mr. Nebelseck? We've
Very
had
well.
this conversation many times over the years.
Very well, and anecdotal data to go with that is how often you used to hear about a graduation from Pride High. As a graduation from Pride High, we'd have students that dropped out at age 16. They'd be out there for 3 or 4 months, and they would come back and they'd have to apply to get back into school. They'd have to go through the interview process. They would have to determine what their goals were going to be, how they were going to accomplish, and we had a wall that had, I believe when this law changed, well over 100 graduates that are on the wall at Pride High. And so during most of those years, I would say that we averaged over a graduate of a month, so 9 to 12 per year. I'll repeat it so the audience can hear, but what do we have for Pride High graduates now?
2 or 3, maybe.
Maybe 2 or 3 a year of people who've come back. And so your chairman explained exactly where we're at, is that we believed that we could get students' attention when they were sophomores, because as Mr. Radke has testified at that podium before, a huge indicator of success and predictability of graduation is how students do in their freshman year. If they earn the credits and they're on track, unless there's a severe health issues or a drug issue, they're going to graduate. But when they fall behind early, and then we're not able to get their attention because they're mandated to continue to come to school until 18, they leave without credits, and there's not enough years left till 21, and they're too old in their own interest in coming back. And so, although it sounds like tough love, our community graduated more students that are currently dropping out when the wake-up call was at 16.
Well said, Mr. Nebelseck. We've been sending Garrett out there the last several years to oppose this, and I think you've been making a little headway, haven't you?
Last year, I actually had some people on my side, so we'll see what happens this year.
I mean, I would still be opposed to this one. I don't know where the rest of you,
Well,
I assume the rest of you are going to be.
there's no change indicated there, so
No.
they're just proposing that it remain the same as it has been, but go fight the good fight.
That's right.
Craig or Shelley, any comments? You okay with that? Okay, go argue for us, Garrett. Okay, next one, South Dakota Academic Content Standards and State Assessment. ASBSD supports South Dakota academic content standards with sufficient financial resources and professional development for school staff to facilitate implementation of the standards and the full participation of students in state assessment exams. See no change there. Comments? Okay, we're good there. Extracurricular and co-curricular activities, free participation. ASBSD supports extra and co-curricular activities as an important component of South Dakota's system of public education and opposes legislation that will in any way establish fees for participation in extra and co-curricular offerings. Makes sense? We're all good there? Okay. School employee compensation is a proposed amendment. ASBSD supports continued commitment by the legislature to enhance the ability to attract, recruit, and retain quality personnel in South Dakota public schools. Looks like they've lined out some things that have been achieved here. Looks pretty straightforward. Anything on that one? Okay. Good there. We'll move into local governance. Students receiving alternative instruction. Homeschool instruction. This is a proposed amendment. ASBSD supports state guidelines for evaluating the academic progress of students receiving alternative instruction, the establishment of effective state regulations to ensure exempted students receive a high-quality education. Looks like they're adding a line, and the right of local public school boards to decide criteria for allowing alternative instruction students to participate in extracurricular and co-curricular activities.
May I comment on that?
Absolutely.
I'm more than fine with the last line on there, and that is a clarification of the state associated school boards trying to meet the desires of varied school districts as far as their opinion on that, so that all of our board members and the public that's listening know, in our district, we were one of the first to to do this years ago. A homeschool student who's a resident in our school district is welcome to come in and meet with the principal on a weekly basis, and sometimes they earn a little bit longer time than that, but they have to turn in grade level quality work in a minimum of 4 subjects in order for the principal to determine that they are eligible the following Monday for the week to come. I don't know if it's everyone since I left, but almost without exception, we have had those students who did that eventually become our students. We found it was one of the best ways to open the door and have parents and students experience public education. So the Huron district would represent one of the most liberal on that. There are other districts that state that they have to attend 2 classes, attend and pass, but attend 2 classes. And that is driven, so that complete disclosure here, that is driven by the fact that then they would at least be receiving 40% of state aid on those students. Our homeschool students that attend, we do not receive state aid for them directly. Again, where we believe not only is it the right thing to do, but indirectly is that most or all of them have become our students. So then when they become our students, we are receiving state support for that. There are a few school districts that have not welcomed homeschool participation. This is going to become a hot button issue this year in the state because, and it has nothing to do with this community or anybody around this community, but where there's a lot of schools in fairly close proximity of home schools, there is a move to allow homeschool students to choose the school that they want to participate in, rather than go through the local district. So where you're going to hear concern from educators, including myself, is we do not want homeschool students from a geographic area of 2 or 3 or 4 closely connected towns down in the southeastern part of the state to say, well, if all of our homeschool students go here because that's where the best football team is, then we'll all have them go there to play football. The balance of competitive balance of every child having a chance to compete goes backwards when they do that. And so that's why they're trying to put in this position, the right of the local school to decide the criteria for students in their district that are homeschooled, rather than there will be a push for legislation from some homeschool representatives to allow free choice of where they go to school and compete. I really am very happy with our local homeschool people that are very, very organized, and their students do well. They are our taxpayers. We treat them with decency and respect. The danger of homeschools through the eyes of the state superintendents are the students who are going to homeschool for all the wrong reasons. And I believe that our most organized homeschool parents would support us on that we should not have children dropping out of school via the homeschool route, which is a totally different game than those who have planned for homeschool, they've gotten homeschool curriculum together, and their students are scoring well accordingly. I know this is taking a little time, but the other thing I would tell you that we're very proud of is our door for letting students in who, as they get older, decide they want to come to school. And Mike, if this practice has changed drastically, please let me know. But if we have a student come in as a sophomore, say, and they've been in a home school, what we did the whole time I was there is say, come on in, see how you do this year. If you do well, you're an A-B student, we will count all of your credits that you bring from home because you showed us that you can compete at the high school level. So obviously your homeschool experience was quality. The only thing we don't do is we don't have heartache between parents who got their grades in a homeschool and this, so the only grades that can count toward their GPA and the only grades that can count toward their class rank as seniors are those grades that were actually received at Huron High School. But they can still, for their transcript, bring in all A's in their freshman year that they were homeschooled if in their sophomore year they performed A work in our district. Mr. Radke, I described that okay? And so I'm very, very proud of where our school is on welcoming them for participation and welcoming them in anytime they would like to become a part of it. And I'm very grateful for the support of the taxpayers who pay their taxes as well as educating their children at home. Thanks for letting me talk.
Thank you, well said. Any-
This-
David?
The way this is written, a local school board could, if it's determining its own criteria, could allow a student from another district to then play with them. Because it just talks about the right of the local public school board to decide criteria for allowing alternative instruction students to participate. And so,
That's a good observation, because you're right, it leaves out an assumption, David, because my assumption with that is for the students residing in their district, what you just read does not clarify that. So Garrett, that would be a concern. The second rationale, or no, that's just the rationale for it, right?
Yes, underneath there's just the rationale. This is the actual resolution here. Yeah, I suppose you could have an out-of-district student come to the local board and request to participate and.
And right now, we do not have that.
Right.
Okay, right now, if a student would come from outside of our district and they wanted to participate in Huron, they would have to open enroll as a full student. Then they could be here. Am I still correct?
I think so.
Yeah.
I've never been approached with that. But
Well,
that would make
if they're
sense.
open enrolling from someplace,
Yes.
they're open enrolling. We don't care where they open enroll from, but they would have to open enroll and be a student. They could not be a homeschool students. The state superintendents and your superintendent believe that homeschool students should only be eligible in the district where their parents reside and pay taxes. So thank you, David. That's an
Good
important
point. Yeah, we should
issue,
have
Garrett.
Garrett request him to add that line.
Writing it down.
Good man. We all good with that then?
Yeah.
Garrett can get that line in? Okay. Okay, school finances. ASBSD supports local governance and the management of district funds. Makes perfect sense. Charter schools. ASBSD opposes any new legislation that creates charter schools beyond what is currently authorized in statute, which permits pilot charter schools for American Indian students. What do we have, what, one charter school in this state, do you know?
I do not know.
I'm not even sure if we have one or any even. Yes, I have no problem with the resolution as it's written.
no change from previous years.
No, it's been that way, at least since 2015 it was revised. Okay. Public funding for non-public education. ASBSD opposes any law that diverts public dollars to fund non-public education in any manner. I think we're all on board with that. Private school scholarship program. ASBSD opposes state law allowing tax credits from insurance company premium and annuity tax to fund a private school scholarship program and permits contributions made by the insurance companies to remain anonymous. And this was a new law that went into effect last year, I believe. I remember reporting on this one as it went through the system. Anybody have anything against that resolution? Okay.
Just give you just a bit of history. That got passed when there were some, just my opinion, there were some understandings between the private and public sector as far as voting on the teacher raise initiative, and then people who said they would support it wound up not supporting it, and that left some real hard feelings in the legislature.
Okay. Do you know if anybody's taken advantage of that yet? Have you heard?
Yes, across the state, yes, they have.
Okay. Okay, school district identification symbols. ASBSD supports local control by public school boards and encourages them to seek input from community stakeholders on matters that involve symbols and events they believe uniquely identify their school. I think we're okay with that one. Number 7, use of bathroom, locker rooms, and other facilities. ASBSD supports the judgment and integrity of local public school boards and school districts to act in the best interests of their students, schools, and community, and show respect for all students, staff, and other individuals, including using bathrooms, locker rooms, and other facilities. This is a local control resolution. Everybody okay with that one? Okay. Legal and financial protection for compliance with state law. ASBSD supports a provision in law that would require the state attorney general's office to represent a public school district should it face a lawsuit while complying with the state law, and indemnify the public school district for any financial liability incurred by the district rising out of the lawsuit. I believe our attorney general has commented on being on board with that. Okay, I guess we're good with that. No, looks like number 9, 4-day school week is being deleted. That didn't really apply to us anyways. Conflict of interest is being deleted. I would assume the new laws have taken care of that resolution. Okay, school finance, school funding, a proposed amendment. ASBSD supports a state education funding system that provides adequate aid for public schools to deliver a high-quality education to all students, competitively compensate district employees, and allow local management of funds through the following provisions that I'm not going to read.
I think just some changes in the rationale.
Yes, changes in the rationale. They're lining a few things out, and
And it's just based upon the
new statute.
Yeah, new statutes.
Yeah.
No change in content, I don't think.
No, the content's all the same. Guess we're good there. Number 2, it looks like they're deleting the ESA funding.
I was just going to ask about this. So they're just giving up on ESAs, getting those back?
That would be my guess when I saw that deleted.
I don't know. Kelly, do you have any?
Didn't hear anything.
Yep, I do not know.
I've got a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths.
Well,
Okay.
the purpose of ESAs is because, terrible English how I'm putting this together, but large schools, 2,600 students, have a collective need for director of instruction, a collective need for ESL services, whatever, they're all busy. But ESAs or co-ops were put together so that 10 schools can have one person help with ESA, with English second language, one person can help with curriculum, etc. So I really believe the schools of that size in the legislature need to decide what is or isn't appropriate. It just does not affect the large 18 schools in the state.
Looks like ASBSD is bailing out on it,
Yeah.
or at least fighting for it. Okay, consistent sparsity funding. ASBSD supports consistent district-level funding provided by the state for sparse school districts as defined in codified law. No change there. School funding, 2-year enrollment averaging. ASBSD supports reinstating the 2-year enrollment averaging or current enrollment, whichever is larger, in place of the fall enrollment count for the state aid formula calculation. We've talked about this over the years. It'd be nice to have back.
It would. I would share with you that the large schools have chosen to not be in favor of that anymore because there's a finite amount of money that's identified to go into state aid, and they would rather that money was moved into adjustment of the, you know how that's all triggered by the target salary now? Those have been in it? Yep. So if the target salary is going to go down each time money is taken away to go into the 2-year averaging, then the long range could be harmful. And so I'm just letting you know that the large school superintendents have been hesitant to continue to support the 2-year averaging if the cost is not moving the target forward for the average salary. And and so hopefully by having that target larger, you'd get state aid, which would compensate you perhaps better than having that cushion when you go backwards. The cushion is now, it's not a cushion, but the way to tolerate that now is the transfer of capital outlay funds when you would have a enrollment shortfall. Kelly, I'm purposely not offering an opinion either way, but that's the description of what happened at the large school superintendents. Do you have a observation on that either way? Not requiring you to, I'm just
I was
wondering.
just gonna ask you for your opinion.
I wish I could see the money roll out, but as a district that is continually growing, it seems to me that the schools that are losing in enrollment appear to have fairly decent, long-standing capital outlay monies. And so therefore, they ought to be able, if they're losing enrollment, they shouldn't have pressure on facilities. They may be able to use money from that while they readjust their enrollment. So Garrett, mine would just be to be open-minded to that discussion either way. I don't have a passionate feeling, but at a vote of the school said we would rather know. And of course, most of the large schools historically are on about a 6 or 7 year of increased enrollment, and so to have the funding, the targets slow down so that people can be compensated on a reduction. I don't know. Garrett, I just wanted you aware.
Okay, you want to take that concern there with us, Garrett? Okay. All right, moving into taxation then. Sales tax revenue, proposed amendment. ASBSD supports utilization of revenue collected from the half-cent increase in the sales tax for state funding of public K-12 education dedicated to teacher salaries. That's what we're hopefully doing now.
And then just a change of the
They're
rest.
changing the rationale with the codified law,
Yeah, just an update from what happened previously.
putting it into, or stating the law that's in place now, yep. Okay, and moving into personnel, continuing contract, ASBSD supports legislation to deny continuing contract rights to teachers who have received 2 consecutive years of unsatisfactory evaluations. No changes there, I see no reason to change anything there. Human Resource Management, ASBSD supports a local public school district's ability to develop hiring, evaluation, and compensation policies, to develop performance and market-based compensation mechanisms that support local efforts to recruit and retain quality staff. There are no changes there that I don't see require any comment. Moving into unfunded mandates. Proposed amendment on state education mandates.
Mr. Chairman, I want to go back to continuing contract a minute.
Sure.
Garrett, as you go out there, I kind of find this one a bit complex because it says that you remove continuing contract rights if they receive 2 consecutive years of unsatisfactory evaluations. Garrett, it shouldn't matter, because if you receive 2 consecutive years, we would expect that teacher to be put on a plan of assistance. And that plan of assistance, if you follow their rights to due process, would end in termination or improvement over the course of time. So whether they have continuing contract rights does not allow anyone to continue to work without doing the job. So, I mean, maybe this gives some administrators confidence to, go through with the process because it removes their continuing contract. I just wanted to share, because I have principals in here that are expected, our staff are either doing the job or they receive a poor evaluation. If they don't improve, they receive a plan of assistance. And if they don't follow the plan of assistance, there is no continuing contract protection. Is that a safe description? So just when they get into that, Garrett, how we operate would not change. Either direction, it would not change. So, sorry I wasn't quick enough.
Jasmine has a question?
Can I quickly ask, what constitutes as a unsatisfactory evaluation? And who's in charge of, just for curiosity's sake?
That's no problem. Each teacher has an assigned supervisor. Oversimplification, that's the principal of that building. Sometimes it could be the principal and the director of instruction, or the principal and the after-school coordinator, the principal and the director of ESL. But primarily it's their principal. And there are rubrics with 4 different quadrants that talk about quality of an employee, quality of their instruction, organization and communication with parents, and ongoing professional development. And so they could be measured in each of those domains, but the main domains that we're after is quality of instructor and quality of human being that we're trusting with the kids. And so most of the time when teachers do not do the job, they have either improved without the students knowing that there was things going on in the background, or they have decided to go someplace else because they were not meeting our standards. And when you have 180 teachers, 350 staff members, some of that's going to be going on all the time. Good question. Did I get close to an answer?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
We can hear the band warming up out in the hall, and it's getting close to 7. And so I would just suggest maybe, in the interest of time, either skip the ones that don't have proposed amendments or just kind of read the headings and see if anybody has any comments on those.
Yeah, I'll try and speed through these. Unfunded mandates, we have state education mandates and federal mandates, and ASBSD supports full funding, so that makes sense, okay? Medicaid service reimbursement, there are no changes there. Support continuing federal Medicaid service, providing health services to Medicaid eligible students. No changes there. School nutrition, flexibility to adjust nutrition, providing school meals that meet the diverse student body. No changes there. Anybody have anything there? E-rate, strengthening the E-rate program by improving the quality and speed of internet connectivity. No changes there, so good with that. Federal relations, Every Student Succeeds Act. Looks like there's no changes there. Repurposing federal funding for school choice expansion. This is a new one. ASBSD opposes the repurposing of federal funds in order to expand school choice options. Everybody okay with that one? Okay, that is it for the legislative resolutions. Unless anybody has any questions. The standing positions, typically nothing changes on those. They're just standing positions at ASBSD. We have one on student achievement, Native American Indian education, health and wellness, technology and education, local governance, school reorganization, public school choice that haven't changed. I see no reason to be opposed to any of those standing positions. We have one proposed amendment on open government and transparency. As public bodies, school boards operate transparent, promotes active civic engagement, public discourse.
Just an addition of supporting conflict
Yes.
of interest disclosures.
Yes, that's all it is. Everybody good with that one? We have school finance and safe and secure schools. Have no changes and look fine to me. We have a proposed amendment on investment in education. ASBSD believes devoting public funds to elementary and secondary education is an investment in the social economic future of our children, our communities, our state, and our nation.
And it's
They're
just
just adding a
just a-
section.
It's just a quotation right out of the state constitution regarding the constitution. The state constitution has a mandate that South Dakota is going to provide a general and uniform system of public schools, and they're just quoting that.
Everybody's good with all the standing positions then? Okay, that completes our agenda. I'm going to need a motion to go into executive session for 2 items. We have one in accordance with South Dakota Codified Law 1-25-2 subsection 4, contract negotiations, and 1-25-2 subsection 1, and qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness of any public school employee or prospective